Do you yearn for those creamy, dreamy bokeh backgrounds in your images, but you don't have the right lens or camera equipment to capture it in camera? Not a problem. I have just the solution for you. In this video tutorial, I'm going to show you how to add pop and creativity to your images using bokeh overlays. Hi, I'm Darlene with Digital Photo Mentor, and I teach beginner and intermediate photographers like you how to improve your photography, right from capture in camera all the way through to the finished product in the editing process. I'm eager to show you how to apply bokeh overlays, so let's get started. If you enjoy this video, please remember to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. For the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to be using Lightroom as my base, Luminar AI as a plugin, and I'll also demonstrate how to add the bokeh overlays using Photoshop as a layer. I've already made a few before and after examples using the bokeh overlays in our ultimate bokeh overlay pack. So I wanted to just show you the images that are in the pack first. I've created all of these images using Photoshop and also photographing different light sources to create a set of different colored bokehs of different sizes, some zoomed, etc. So they should give you a good set of bokeh images that you can choose from to get maximum creativity for your images. These are a few examples that I've already done. This was a stock image that I got from Pixabay, and the background lent itself to adding some bokeh because there's some already there. But I wanted to spruce it up a little bit, so I used one of the bokeh overlays in my pack that has a bit of a zoom effect, and it makes her feel like she's in a big, busy city. Same here. This one already has nice bokeh, but I wanted to add a bit more. So I just added one that was a similar color with the yellow bokeh in the background to enhance what was already there. Likewise with this one, there's already a lot of blur in the background and there is some bokeh, but I wanted it to be a little bit more defined and yellow. So I added one with a really golden glow to create this sunlight bokeh effect. There's another one where I added bokeh only to the bottom. So it was only applying to the background and not to the flower or the tree. I'll show you how to do that in a moment. This is an image that I photographed in Tokyo in Japan, and it's one of my favorites. I wanted to really kind of spruce it up with some light blobs and bokeh, and this one worked really well. Likewise, of this image of Tower Bridge in London, I just added the purple bokeh overlay from my set to give it a little bit more sparkle. So I think you're getting the idea of what we can do with these bokehs. We can apply them to images that already have some background blur to increase the effect, or we can add them to images that don't even have it, such as this one, and do the same thing. I'm going to use my little bird friend here that I photographed in Nicaragua to demonstrate how to add a bokeh overlay in Luminar AI. Now, if you're using the standalone version of Luminar AI, just open the image of your choice and go to the edit panel. So I'm going to choose edit in. I've right-clicked and I'm choosing Luminar AI. Now, for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to choose a TIFF and open it up in Luminar. Once the image is open, the first thing that I want to do is just do a few basic corrections. I could have done that in Lightroom as well, but I'm just going to do a little accent AI. And I'm also going to lower the highlights because I know that when I'm adding the bokeh overlays, they are a bit on the bright side and I want to increase the highlights. So I want to bring the highlights down in this image behind the bird so that when the bokehs are overlaid, they show up brighter. You'll see how that works in a minute, and if it's not quite the right setting, I can always come back and adjust it later. Now I'm going to hop over to the local masking tool on the far right. It's right below the basic tools. And I'm going to click Add Texture. Because basically what these bokehs are is they are a texture overlay. It's just an image of bokeh instead of something like a crumbling wall or a piece of paper. I've already added these to my set of custom textures, and you can do that just by finding your custom folder and plopping any that you've created or purchased into this custom folder. So I've already done that. which means that when I do this pull down menu and choose my ultimate bokeh pack, all the images in the pack that I showed you earlier are all right there. Now for this one, you'll notice that all the images are in different colors, and I've done that on purpose so that you can choose one that matches the color of the image that you want to add it to. So I want to add something yellow to the background of this one. So let's take a look and see which one might fit. I think one of these. So then I just select it, and you'll notice that out of the gate, it's not perfect. It doesn't look exactly how I intended it. But what we can do is edit this image by changing the blend mode and the opacity, and then also masking it off the bird. So I'm going to try some of the different blend modes. Lighten, screen, overlay. I find that overlay often does a good job, as does soft light. So I'm going to go with soft light, but lower the contrast a little bit and increase the brightness. Now you can see what I mean by the bokeh overlays are only showing up in the darker areas as opposed to this highlight. So if I want to lower the highlights a bit more, I can go in here. Or remember inside of Luminar AI to use the super contrast tool, which will affect the highlights nicely and darken them down. And now you can see that the bokeh shows up better on top of those darkened highlights, like so. So going back to our bokeh, we can adjust the opacity. We can change the amount of saturation so it's more white or warmer. You can also change the tint of it if you want it a different color. I'm happy with the color and the saturation level, and we're going to actually give it a little more contrast now, and that's looking pretty good. The only thing is we want to get it off the bird, so I'm going to use the masking feature and the erase portion of this tool to erase it off of our bird friend here. Let me go ahead and do that, and then I'll be right back. Okay, there we go. Now you notice that I've also removed it from the fence post because the bokeh wouldn't be coming into the foreground necessarily. So I wanted it to just look like it's in the background, so I made sure to remove it from the fence, this clothes or whatever is on this fence here that he's sitting on, and the bird himself. So you can see when I turn off the bokeh, it only goes into where the background is located. Now I can play around a little bit more with things like I can try flipping it a different direction and see if I like that any better. And I think I actually prefer it how it was originally, like that. So I'm going to leave it there, and that's about it for this one. Now if I want to try a different bokeh, keep in mind that the image is already masked, the bird is already masked, so any bokeh that I choose is actually going to be masked automatically. Okay, so now I've chosen one that has a bit of green in the background, so that's one's kind of interesting as well. Let's try one with yellow and green. That works pretty good too. So you could try different bokehs on different images and see which one works. I think this one works pretty well, but I might just turn the saturation down a tiny little bit. So now the green of the bokeh matches really nicely with the parrot. I'm going to hit apply and bring it back to Lightroom as a finished image. There's the before image with the bokeh that I just applied and the one that I made a little bit earlier. You can see that by changing out the bokeh overlay image and the tones, you can make a completely different look for your image. Before I do the next part of the demonstration with Photoshop, I just wanted to show you how to get our ultimate bokeh overlay pack. It's currently on sale 50% off for our fall event until November 21st. Just go to digitalphotomentor.com/fall-sale and you'll see all of our items and products, including our signature courses, portrait photography, and 4 weeks to better photography, our beginner course, on sale. So grab one of our bokeh packs and let's hop over and see how to do it in Photoshop. Once again, I'm back here in Photoshop. And this is an image also from Japan that I edited and added an overlay previously, but I did this one using Photoshop. So it's actually a Photoshop document. So if I right click in Lightroom and choose Edit in Photoshop, Okay, so I don't want to open it as a smart object, but edit in Photoshop and then make sure I edit the original. Basically, I can continue from where I left off last time. Okay, I've got the image open in Photoshop, and you can see here, if I enlarge my layers panel, you can see the original image is at the bottom layer. I added a curves layer just to darken it a little bit, make it moodier. And then I added another image, which is one of the bokeh overlay images as an overlay. Well, let me just shrink this down here so you can see it better. So you can see what it's doing is it's adding some yellow and different spots. And I've also masked it. So I'm going to start this process again and just show you how I've done this. So I can go back to Bridge where I have all my bokeh images and take a look at which one I might want to add and literally just drag it in and drop it. So I'm thinking this one here with the red spots and orange spots is going to look good because it's going to match the color of the lanterns. When you drop it in, it may not match the exact size, so you just have to move it till it touches the edges and resize it to fit the image. Make sure you get the whole image. Once you get it sized, right, now the image is covering the original. So we need to play with the blend modes. Your layer blend modes are up here. Once again, just like in Luminar, it's going to probably be one in this section where it's lighten or screen, or one in this section here. Let me see what I used on this one. Looks like I used lighten. So I'm going to try lighten. The next thing you're going to want to do is lower the opacity. So 100% opacity, the bokehs are too strong. Now you'll notice that just by lowering the opacity and changing the blend mode, I've gotten really close to something that could be finished. I could play around with flipping the bokeh. Now keep in mind, if you want to do that in Photoshop, you need to use transform, because if you say image rotation and you flip the image, it's going to flip everything. Okay, so if you just want to flip the layer, make sure that you go edit, transform, and then flip or rotate this way. So that's not bad as well. The lanterns are on the left hand or the right hand side, pardon me, of this image. So I think having the bokeh on this side makes more sense. And in this image, the bokehs are more of a foreground or like a lens flare. So now I can choose where I want to mask them out and where I want them to appear. So I'm going to add a layer mask with this little icon down here. And then I'm just going to choose the paintbrush. So that's B shortcut on my keyboard. And make sure that I'm painting with black. If you don't have black and white as your foreground and background colors, just press D on your keyboard. And then if you want to switch them, X does a rotate. Okay, so you want to make sure that you have black. So anything that you paint on the mask, and you want to make sure that you're painting on the mask, not on the layer. And you can tell because these little white squares or these little corners are around the part that you're actually selected at that moment. So make sure you're on the mask. And then I'm going to paint with about 50% opacity. And a shortcut when you're using your brush is you can actually just hit the numbers on your keyboard. So 8 gives me 80% opacity, 4 gives me 40. Right? I'm going to make my brush larger. I'm using the square bracket keys. And I think this one right here is just too obnoxious. So I'm going to either tone it down, that's better, or get rid of it entirely. Because most of the bokeh should be appearing over on this side of the image where the lights are. That looks a little better. Maybe I'll put this one back. I like that one. So now really quickly, I've added this bokeh overlay and I can turn it off and on. We can adjust the blend mode, we can adjust the opacity of the layer, and we can mask it using black to paint out where you don't want it to show, so black conceals, or if you paint with white, it's going to reveal or show that overlay. So I think I like this one better. Let's take a look at the two. This is the bokeh that I just added, and this is the one that I had done earlier. I think I like the new one better, so I'm actually just going to delete this layer. There it goes. Now there's a really quick little trick for changing bokeh. And I'm gonna just do it real fast and then I'll show you what the trick is. So if I want to pick a different one, let's try this one. I will just drag it and drop it, but I didn't just drop it on top of the image. I did a little interim step, and I'm gonna show you how I did that real quick. Yes, I'll just save it. So what I've done is I've opened this as the smart object and then change the image there. Okay, let's flip it again because now it's on the wrong side. So edit, transform. I could actually rotate this one 180 as well. It's going to do the same thing. Again, I don't think I like that one as much, but you'll notice now that I only have still one overlay. And the benefit of doing that is that the mask was maintained. So all I did was I changed the actual bokeh image, but I didn't just drag it and drop it in because then it would not have the mask applied. I'd have to mask it again. So how you do that in Photoshop, a little bonus tip for you, is you just click on the thumbnail, double click on the thumbnail, making sure that this is a smart object. And if you drop the image in like I demonstrated earlier, it will automatically be a smart object. That means that it's editable. So I double click on the actual thumbnail and now you'll see that I just have that image open. So now I can just go and grab any other image. Let's try something completely different. Let's try this one. Again, more yellow and orange. Then you need to flatten the layers. And that's just with a quick Command or Control E, save it, and then when you close this image, it updates the original one with the mask intact. So how cool is that? Now I'm seeing that there's a lot more bokeh in this one than there was in the other one. It's a lot kind of all over the place, but let's try our flip again. So it takes a little bit of playing around and experimenting to get the bokeh exactly the way you want it. But I find that it's a process that I find quite creative and enjoyable. So play around with the different options for each of the bokehs. This looks pretty good also. Let me just turn my layers off. Okay. Like so. And there's one right in the middle of the path that I'm going to get rid of. There we go. So if I now save this and close it, it's going to take it back into Lightroom and you'll see the update with the new overlay applied. There's the before and there's the after. So keep in mind, this is fully editable because I've done it in Photoshop as a smart object. I can get back to the point that I just finished at any time as I can with this one here, which is also PSD. So I can open it up in Photoshop, make sure I edit the original, and it will show me all the layers and the overlay with the mask that I had done previously, as you can see here. So I could change this bokeh overlay the same way that I did the other one. You can see that I've also flipped it, obviously. So let's see if there's one that might look interesting on there. There's, I think, this one. Okay, so I like the pink, because it goes with the background of the trees and the flowers. So let's go with that one. So I'm going to flatten it, save it, and close it. And then it will come back in Photoshop with the new overlay applied. Now you can see that this one might require a little more masking than the other one. So I'm just going to make sure that I paint the bokeh out here so it's not over the tree or the flowers, because I want it to be just on the background. Let's do that like so. And once again, I can still play around with the blend mode, see if anything works any better, and also with the opacity. Okay. Now in this case, I actually think that the one that I used earlier was more successful. So comparing to the one that I had before to this one, this was a little bit more subtle. Okay, so if you want less bokeh, you can certainly do that. Okay, so you don't have to use these to complete overwhelm. You can add just a couple. Let's see if we want to add something like this, where it's a little bit more minimalist. So you don't have to go crazy with bokeh madness. you can just add a few. Now you can see that I've chosen the different bokeh overlay and only had a few showing in the background, so it looks a bit more realistic. If I want to add a few more back in, I can just alter the mask. Make sure I'm painting on the mask. And I think I like this one over here. Like so. I hope I've given you some ideas and inspiration on how to use bokeh overlays in a subtle way or in a more dramatic way to add some creativity and pop to your images. If you want to learn more about how to use texture overlays in Luminar AI, watch this video now.